Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that the YouTube algorithm it goes by percentage of the video watched and how long you watch it for. So it's like a little hack for me to speed up the video and then have you slow it down. So I know it's a little bit of an inconvenience. I'm going to ask you before we get started to click I think right about here, and you can go in the settings and slow it down to half speed if you want to watch it at the normal speed. Because I have sped up this video. It plays nicely with it. So thank you for understanding and enjoy. So who doesn't know cryptocurrency? It's like blockchain technology. Maybe it's worth pausing this video and going to check it out. It could do different things with the financial system. It could do different things with voting. But where it is, it's like the younger generation, the Gen Zs, the millennials. Like I think that's mostly who's investing in this stuff. I can't say for sure. It's really almost impossible to tell. But I hear a lot from the older generation, that it's fool's gold. It's this, it's that. It's not, it's not that it's not real, but it's not valuable. Like, there's dumb things to invest in. We were even at a dinner the other night, and it was just, everyone's got an opinion. It's very valid. There was the Warren Buffett, I even know, he thinks it's insane. There's people that would never invest in it that I believe are over the age of, let's say, 60. And there's even a meme on Reddit where it's like, it's kind of classified as like old white man yells about Bitcoin, and so it's like anytime someone over the age of like 60, bashes Bitcoin, they're like, you can, it's weird because like I've done so much research that I can hear it in their voice and like the way they speak. I'm like, okay, you don't really get what you're saying. I was like, or you hear a politician say, we're going to regulate Bitcoin. It's like, okay, you really don't understand what you're saying. Like, so, when it comes to communication, it's like, being on this side of the spectrum, it's like, the older generation has majority of the wealth. Like, that's just what's always going to happen. That's the way it's always going to be. It's like, so, in my eyes, it's like, part of me is selfish. Like, I want to get all these old people into Bitcoin and then I'll inflate all my coin values. But it's like, I'm curious if you could because you're, I believe, on the end of the side. Well, how about you tell us? You tell us where you are and then why you think there's like this separation in the generations with crypto.
Well, I think I've been struggling to learn what crypto is. You've helped me a lot, kind of exploring into it. Part of it is understanding, like when we talk about financial intellect or your ability to understand finance.
Literacy.
I think, yeah, your financial literacy, that's the term. I read this book when the market crashed in 2008, 2009, our business, we lost 60% of our business within a couple months. So it was very devastating, very scary.
Right.
I learned a lot from that experience, but it was also a very trying time. So a friend of mine gave me the book Web of Debt by Denise Brown, and it was kind of a fascinating study on currencies and how they work. And it was historical as well as looking at the American currency, the US dollar, how it's used and its history. And I began to understand that currency today used to be backed by the gold standard, as they called it. There were silver certificates backed by silver, and that was all changed. They no longer do that. Like around the turn of the century, 1900s, they created the Federal Reserve Bank, which I find fascinating because it really is not a federal agency. It's actually the big banks that were anointed to print money for the government. Okay, our Constitution says that only the federal government can coin money. And keep in mind, when that was written, that's all there was coined money. There was no paper money.
Right.
So you had valuable coins, and only the government could coin money. So a bunch of smart bankers and politicians figured, well, we need to get control of printing of cash away from the government, put it in the hands of the banks, and that's really what happened. And then we got a constitutional amendment ratified through the states. Congress voted, signed it, and you got the Federal Reserve Bank was created. And once that was created, they then create money, like print the cash and loan it to our federal government. So now you understand why we have federal income tax. It was created in order to pay the interest on that money the government was borrowing from the banks.
Well, let's look a little here. All right, we describe, because I know what you're saying, but I feel like it happened real quick there, right? So, so essentially, in essence, what we have in this country, well, it's a fact of the world, what we have in our monetary system, the way the US dollars is created, right? It's like, how can so the question becomes is like, you hear in the last, let's make it attached to real, where we have all this extreme money being printed, let's say, it's like something like a couple $1 trillion have been printed in the last 2 years. The question becomes is like, where does that money come from? Or if you ask that question, where does that money come from? To summarize what you're saying, let me know if I've missed out any points, is, way back when, I think it was like the early 1910s, the bankers got together and said, let's get a hold of the monetary system of the United States. The United States, through lobbyists, through not understanding financial literacy, said, okay, sure, we can do that. That makes sense based on the way you're describing it. So they created what's called the Federal Reserve, but it's technically a private bank that then the US government says, hey, we need $2 trillion. And the private bank says, okay, we'll print you $2 trillion. And then you owe us $2 trillion.
Plus interest.
Plus interest.
Yeah. So it's not a single bank, but it's a collection of the big banks. Okay. Like the Rockefellers, it was something that they attempted to do throughout history, like during the Civil War. Lincoln went to the banks because he needed to borrow money for the war because he didn't know how he was going to fund the war because there was no income tax. And the bank said, okay, yeah, we'll loan you whatever you need. It's going to be 30% interest. And Lincoln's like, we can't pay 30% interest. So to his treasury guy or whoever his financial advisor, they said, well, we're the federal government, we can make our own money. We're allowed in the Constitution to coin money, so let's do it. And so then it became an issue. So then the banks began printing Confederate currency, and the Union was printing Union money. And at the end of the war, the banks did a run. They basically spread rumors that the Union dollar was going to devalue, and so there was a run on it, and they basically bought up all the Union money, and then were able to capitalize on the fact that they bought cheap and then could return it to its full value by loaning it out. So there was this big thrust. So it's and even before that, it's kind of interesting because in Denise Brown's book, it's kind of fascinating how she chronicles this. It's very interesting, and I probably don't remember all the facts, but the bottom line was the banks have always been trying to get control of the monetary system because they know that's where all the power is. And so when that happened at the turn of the century, it seemed logical to everybody. Well, the banks are the people that control money, so we should let them print the money. What could be more logical than that? But what people didn't understand is we're indebting the U.S. federal government to the banks, and that's why we have a debt. I mean, the reason we have a debt is because we borrow from the banks. Whereas if we were printing our own money and spending it for infrastructure or defense, there would be no debt, right? Because we just print the money we need to do it, and we do it, and it'd be done. And it's interesting when I've talked to various financial people. On one side of the spectrum is, oh, that's crazy, that's stupid, that's not true, and then other people say, yeah, it's exactly what goes on. So so depending on who you talk, oh yeah, within one company of my financial advisors, I get people with completely opposite opinions of whether that's real or not. What Denise Brown described.
Wait, okay, so this is pretty crazy. So within the financial community, they haven't even determined that this is what actually happens or not. So this is still
it's like a belief system. It's like when we were at dinner the other night, and they can't comprehend the idea of blockchain. Like, why is that having value in crypto, right?
Right.
And we get inflation. Why? Because we print a lot of money. I mean, the whole idea of value is related to scarcity,
Supply
not
demand,
abundance,
right?
right? Supply and demand. If you have a little bit of gold, it's worth a lot because it's a rare metal. It's valued. So the less there is of it, the more valuable it is. Same with silver, platinum. Well, the dollar used to be backed by gold or silver, so there was a fixed amount.
Right.
And I think that's what I'm beginning to understand about blockchain is some of these cryptos, not all of them, but some of them have a fixed amount, okay, and it'll be released over time. And you can't screw with it like they can screw with the value of the dollar because the crypto is locked in this, the blockchain or the software that's mined all over. Yeah. So you can't really influence or change its value arbitrarily. And I think that's what's happened. I mean, if you look at the world today, I believe the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, would go around and help struggling countries that have financial problems, and they'd get them to tie their finances to the US dollar.
Let's describe the IMF. I'm not understanding.
Yeah, the International Monetary Fund.
Yeah, what is that? How's it created?
I think it's an international organization. I probably don't know the history of it.
Okay.
And over time, they've always gone into countries and helped them stabilize their currency or economy. And and then again, I took this from the book of Denise Brown. They would go in and, if you have a disabled, like where there's runaway inflation, things like that, they'd say, okay, well, let's tie your currency to the US dollar. So its value is based on the US dollar. So that'll give you stability because the US dollar is kind of the gold standard in the world.
Right.
Because it's backed by the full faith and credit of the US government. It's not backed by gold or silver, just the full faith and credit of the US government.
So the US dollar is printed by central banks, but the IMF is propping it up as, well, if you believe in the US government, then you should tie it to the US dollar.
Well, yeah, that's a way of stabilizing foreign currencies. If you're in a country where it costs $1,000 to buy a loaf of bread, that doesn't make sense because it gets more and more expensive.
Right. Venezuela.
So the IMF would go in and tie these currencies to the US dollar, and that brings more importance to the US dollar worldwide because it becomes a benchmark of funds.
Right.
And I think the British pound is that way, and that's why they went back to the British pound. They were in the euro dollar and all that, and then Britain has broken away now from the euro dollar. So the British pound was always, I think they always kept the British pound, if I'm not mistaken.
I think was there. Yeah, when they left the EU, before they were in the EU, I don't think they ever went to the euro.
Right. So people don't understand. I think a lot of people just don't have that financial literacy to understand how fractional lending works, how banks make money on money. And I firmly believe we live in a debtor society where we're controlled because we have debt. I mean, I don't know if you remember when you were graduating, or even when you were just enrolling at Central Florida, there were 2 or 3 banks there trying to get you to sign up for credit cards. Okay. You're just starting your educational career. You're going to assume debt with your school loan, and they're trying to lend you credit right there without any job or anything. Right. So the idea is, if you have debt, it kind of forces you to make decisions in order to pay off that debt because you don't want to lose your car, lose your home, or whatever.
Well, now you're making decisions out of fear.
Exactly. Make decisions out of fear, and your decisions are predictable now because if you don't do that, you're going to lose everything, and 90% of people don't want to do that. They don't want to lose everything. So you keep working, paying the debt, and you're attached to things, right? So we live in a debt society. When you get rid of your debt, like I think you have much more freedom because your decisions are now based on what you want to do. It's not a fear of losing your house or losing your car. And I think if you own them, you don't owe anybody anything.
Right. A perfect example to that is I think my life where I'm at right now. I'm in Orlando. Like, I am debt free. I'm net positive on net worth. So it's like that's a big thing. Especially when I was leaving San Diego, it's like I hear from a lot of people my age who I'm going to in Pittsburgh, and now again I'm hearing in Orlando. And God bless everyone who has said this. I'm just pointing out that it's so great you're in a place in your life where you can do that, and it's kind of a weird thing for me to hear from people my own age. It's like, well, you can do it too, kind of thing. And but to not get too far off topic, but part of that is the idea of, well, I still have debt, or I still need to pay this. I still need to pay this. I mean, it comes back to money. Money is a huge reason that people aren't living the life that they want to live, or that they can see on the other side of it almost.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it is driven by, and I guess it used to be easy to go bankrupt. Well, the bank stopped that. They changed the laws. So to go through bankruptcy now is very difficult. Well, it used to be you can out debts and declare personal bankruptcy. You're out 5 years later. You're able to borrow again. Now it's much more difficult to even declare because it costs banks a lot of money. Well, sure. But it was a decision point. So now even if you want to go bankrupt, it could be tough. And you can be dogged by your debts for many years after if you stop working or can't afford to pay. So it's a part of the society we live in, and part of it too is our peer recognition. We don't want people to see us lose our home or lose our car. So there's that added psychological anxiety on top of the fact that you lose everything.
Something about crypto. Let's kind of go back to that conversation. And I still think there's something here with why is it that your generation doesn't really grasp the value of it? And I think this happens with older generations whenever the new generations come up. So let's start here.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is you're a generation that's grown up with the website and technology. Ours is not. Right. There are people in my generation that are very knowledgeable of it. They're probably more capable of understanding the nuances of what crypto is and how it works. But I think the point we're getting to before we were having a discussion about the monetary system is, it's about rarity. I mean, value is derived from supply and demand. Right. There's value if there's not a lot of something and people want it. Right. So crypto is by the way it's made. Most of them are made, but there's only going to be so many of them. Like they can't go out and print another trillion of them. Right. So I don't know, because I know some cryptos don't have a limit, but like Bitcoin I think has a limit. Right. There's going to be X number of Bitcoin and that's it. So once it becomes something that can be traded for goods or services, then it has value. And because it's limited in quantity, the value can continue to rise. Now they say it's been very volatile, but I think our cash US dollar would be very volatile, except there's a lot of controls on it. I mean, we don't really live in a capitalist society. Everybody thinks we're a capitalist society. No, we're not. We're like a pseudo socialist society because we have people changing interest rates, we have people controlling the money supply, we have people controlling the cost of goods and services, we have them supporting the cost of producing things. All of those affect the value of the dollar and our individual wealth. And people say, well, you need that to make things stable, but I'm not sure that's true. I think we do that because we control our wealth.
Here's the question: even if it is, you have quote unquote, you have to do that to make it stable. Even if that's true, let's just take that as true.
Right.
Does it need to be stable? Isn't it better to have this volatile, uncertain? I mean, maybe not, but isn't uncertainty almost better for growth and because change is inevitable? But is this just us trying to human our way into controlling one more thing of reality?
Right. Well, I don't know the answer to that. And I think that's what crypto is going to tell us because we're so conditioned to wanting to control everything that when things are controlled, we're much more comfortable with them. When I can expect a certain amount of return on investment, that's comforting because there's less risk if it works out. Right. So with crypto, I mean, the numbers fluctuate, but some of those numbers fluctuate, I think, because of outside things
Sure,
happening. Like,
sure. It's a small market. It's still a small market
right,
cap.
it's
Like,
a small
for sure.
market, and when you have Tesla come out and say, we're gonna take crypto,
100%.
we're gonna take Bitcoin for our car.
100%.
That creates a big demand. Like, oh, the value of this has just changed.
Right.
Then he changes his mind, the value changes again. So the volatility wasn't because of the element, it was because of the market forces
Right.
that were trying to
For sure.
change it.
Outside
So,
influence.
right, outside influencers. And I think crypto, though, other than public opinion and the savviness of those investing in it, I don't think it can be affected as much by governments. I don't, like the
Oh,
dollar,
no.
you can say we're going to print more. They can't go and make more Bitcoin.
Right.
So it kind of takes away some of that, control, or I don't want to say control. It takes away some of that
Human influence.
Yeah, to influence the value of Bitcoin.
To manipulate
Same with, so to manipulate it. Yeah. So I think Bitcoin is going to be an interesting element. I like that there's 2 countries have already adopted it
I think it's
as a form
crazy.
of currency. So it will be very interesting to see how it evolves.
I mean,
it'll be interesting to see how people try to deal with it. Governments. So.
Yeah, and to get back, I think a parallel I kind of saw in something you're talking about was like that. And this is kind of a theme I think of our whole conversation, right? Is like, do we really want it to be stable, right? The aspect of controlling things, right? And if you bring this back to like a relationship level, it's like you can't have the highs without the lows, right? You can't have the acknowledgement of this person. Like if everything is so consistent and stable and just like this is it, you kind of take away the euphoria or the magic of it all, and it's now no longer this always changing kind of sinusoidal, let's say, wave of some sort where you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, and there's
what's a better hike to go on a piece of asphalt in New Mexico that is 100 miles straight flat and everything's the same, or taking a walk up through the Rocky Mountains, paths, and one is much more challenging and interesting and fun, and the other is just it's the same. There's nothing, doesn't get your heart rate up. So
which is interesting you point that out, because like to go back to the financial literacy people or the financial professors, it's like don't invest in anything that's crazy or fun. Just stick to this boring stuff. Like stay with boring stuff your entire life. It's like then why the fuck am I even living? Like why am I living if I'm just getting everything that's boring? Like what the fuck type of reality is that?
I know. Well, it's not only that. It's like it's all about like meeting the norm, like what everybody's decided the norm is. So like to have the norm, to have the retirement nest egg, you got to do it this way. And that works. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, the other way of doing it is taking a 9-to-5 job and working 60 years and retiring, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of that 60 years, I was like, what did I do? Did I experience anything in my life? Probably not. I mean, whereas you go and start a business, or you do a profession, or you build things, or you become an electrician, you can talk about the achievements, the things you've built, what you've created with your hand. I mean, there's again, it's back to that journey. The journey is the value, like the money is maybe the reward or some of the end results so you can enjoy your retirement. I don't know. I mean, but
again, what's retirement? I mean, enjoy your retirement.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Should you be enjoying the process?
Well, I still haven't fully converted to this new mindset. So I'm still stuck.
Conditioning is still there. That's great. But that's so great. I mean, I'm kind of glad you made that mistake. Like it highlights in this episode like how it's just so ingrained. It's like you keep going down the same rut. I mean, I also really like your analogy of like, do you want this just stable slope of, with every single day you got like 0.02%. I mean, there's those options. Those options exist in the finance world where you can literally just guarantee 1%. And then you hear the argument, oh, well, like that's not fast enough. You're never going to get rich off that. It's like, okay, so what? I should be an inconsistent 3%. And hey, diversify. End of the day, 100% diversify. I'm no financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. Full disclosure. But just it's like I think there's like, and here's where I kind of sit on it, and maybe this is a good transition, is I think that there's value to what these financial professors and Warren Buffett and all these, let's say, finance people who say no, just do the simple stuff. I think there's value to it. I think that you should be putting some of your money into those stable things where if you do need it for whatever reason, you can just sell it and you have it. But at the end of the day, that's like the only way you're gonna get rich off that is if you're consistently doing that day over day over day over day over day, putting in the same amount of money every single day. And it's like, hey, again, there's more than one ways to get rich. There's more than one ways to make money. If that's what you want to do, by all means. I know people who are completely content living a comfortable, steady stream life. But I don't think that's for everybody. And I think that's probably something that we miss as a society, is that it's like, well, what's right for you might not be right for me. What's right for me might not be right for you.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, everybody has a path in life, and you can't impose what you think is best on someone else. It's the only thing that matters to them is what's best for them, what they feel is best for them, and you can support that. You can engage with it, and for ourselves, we have to find our own journey. And everybody has a different type of journey. They're not all the same by any means.